We next hear from Representative John Bill Edwards, who sits on the House Education Committee. Representative Edwards, as we think about Mr. Marshall's hope for an excellent educational system, we have to talk about the system itself and the structure of that system. So I'd like to ask you, what do you think the impact of charter schools and vouchers will be on funding for local public schools in the short term and in the long term?
Well, thank you, Professor Dyson, and thanks to the folks at Louisiana Progress for putting this on, and to the church for allowing us to be here. Charter schools are public schools, and a lot of times there's some confusion about that, but they are. The distinction is between charter schools and traditional public schools. And there is a lot of conflict there and back and forth. I can tell you that in my first term in the legislature, all of which I sat on the Education Committee, I was generally supportive of charter schools. The purpose, as you all know, is to give the school more autonomy, less red tape, and let them do laboratories to figure out if there are better ways to educate our children. And if we develop better ways to educate our children, you then import those to the traditional public schools. In my 5 years now, going on 6, I don't see much of an effort to identify and then import into our traditional public schools improved teaching methods from charter schools. Now, I think the charter school movement has kind of taken some steroids and just a little bit gotten out of control in a couple of ways. One is this past year, despite everybody always saying, you see TV commercials today, that the number one ingredient, the most important ingredient to a successful education system is having a highly qualified teacher in every classroom. Well, we passed a bill this year that became law where charter schools are not required to hire any certified teachers. None. Zero. To me, that's going too far. That's not a laboratory that I think we need to be experimenting in. Secondly, I'm very concerned about local charter authorizers, where you'll have not your local school board and not the Bessie board at the state level, which we all vote for people to sit on, but private corporations authorized by Bessie to then turn around and authorize charter schools to pop up in our neighborhoods. And when that happens, that's where the kids will go, that's where the dollars will go. But that isn't what the local taxpayers ever voted upon as far as their taxes are concerned. Now, so the charter school, I think that whole movement has just gone too far, too fast, and it needs to get back to its original intent. The vouchers is an open question because, as you all may know, the scheme that we had in place before this year was in New Orleans only. Vouchers were funded with a separate line item appropriation. Nobody ever challenged that funding legally, and those vouchers were available to the kids. This past year, in Act 2, the legislature collectively, although I was opposed to it, passed a statewide voucher program and attempted to fund it through the MFP. Well, that is illegal, in my opinion. I said it then, and it's been determined to be so at the state district court level. I don't know what's going to happen in the Supreme Court. I don't like to hazard a guess, but I suspect that will be affirmed. And so the funding, as it relates to traditional schools and these vouchers, that's an open question, but I suspect we're going to have to go back to funding the program if we're going to continue to fund it at all, outside the MFP, either with a separate line item appropriation, and it's not just for the vouchers, it's course choice and some other things, but primarily vouchers. But funded outside of the MFP would be my guess. And the question then becomes, are we going to try to cut the MFP? It's been 5 years since we've had a growth in the MFP. The MFP envisions a 2.75% growth factor each year to account for inflation. We haven't done that in 5 years. The question is now that we can't fund the governor's voucher program through the MFP, will there be an effort to actually scale back on the MFP, take that additional money, and somehow route it to vouchers? I would hope that's not what we do. but we're just going to have to see it, and I will obviously oppose that type of move.
Thank you, Representative Edwards. We will next hear from